Before we start today, I want to preface this video here by saying that this swap is my favorite swap. I want this B48 to fit into this E30 really bad. I think that the B48 is the perfect blend of power and weight, and the E30 is the perfect blend of weight and handling. Now let's get started custom brackets made. Again, these are the brackets that have the offsets in them. The B48 has those channels that require these offsets to be put in place. So I've got it on the passenger side and then on the driver's side, different heights. It's part of the bracket though, and that's what we need to do for our production version. And of course, we've got our hardware at the right length. Now, before I start tearing into the subframe, know that I have an extra subframe here just in case we don't actually need to. So yeah, I will be sacrificing a subframe for the purposes of prototyping, but hey, I'm doing this for you guys. Okay, now the front sway bar is removed. All I gotta do is cut that subframe and throw the engine in. Around this way. The good news is that we can get this to fit. It's light, I can push it really far back, and I've got a lot of room up front for cooling. The bad news is that it does directly interfere with the front subframe. So for the E30 configuration, this is going to require some additional work in order to get a custom front subframe. I know it's probably hard to see me here, but what I'm trying to do effectively is just get the engine to sit in the air. I don't care how it sits, I just want it to sit. That way I can at least put it up on the lift. Okay, so I've got this in place, kind of. This is very rough sitting. There will be modifications to the subframe. What we need to do is we need to make sure that this engine sits straight and as far back as possible, and then we can get the steering rack in its correct location, because that is the most important thing, is the proper steering feel for an E30. So now I've got the transmission sitting on the jack, and it's free to move. So I want to go far back as I can and go from there. The drive shaft is pretty centered in the tunnel, so everything is lining up right now. And I just am having a major problem. As you can see, the oil pan interferes directly with the subframe, but I think that I might have a solution here that can work. Even though the subframe might need to be modified, the power steering location might not have to be. So let's explore that a little bit more. All right, the oil pan has been removed, and you can see that the pump and the chain and everything is all on the back side, and it directly interferes with the subframe, which is not good. So that's not good, but that's something that I'll figure out a product that I might be able to design for the enthusiast community to allow them to still install this into the E30. One compromise I was not willing to make, however, was the steering rack location. And it seems like if I can get away with a different oil pan, that I actually could install the steering rack in this location. I kept this mount here. This mount's gone, but I can put it there, no problem. And you can see here that the steering rack might actually fit. And this oil pan is what's gonna help. Look at how much lower this oil pan is than the other oil pan. It's got a much thinner profile. Turn it around, I've got some oil in here, but just like that. It's got a different profile here. I mean, look at this. That's kind of like a curved bottom. This one here is a little bit more squared off, exactly right where the steering rack needs to be. So this actually could work out really well using a different oil pan. So I'm gonna install it and I'm gonna make my mounts outside of that and make sure that that steering rack fits. Now that you can see this oil pan is installed with just a couple bolts, you can see the dramatic shape difference, allowing us to now put the steering rack in. A lot more on that later. The transmission bracket has been created. I kind of left out a lot of the details of that, but basically it was just a lot of taking an E30 6 and 54 bracket and doing all these different bends to it to make it fit perfectly. And after that, it fits absolutely perfect. Now keep in mind that this is just a mock-up. This is just a prototype for me to make a jig, and that jig will allow me to make a more professional, stronger, bigger, beefier bracket. Take this and move this out of the way. So this guy right here is a spreader clamp that I have pushing against the radiator core support against the crank hub, and that's actually just keeping the engine pushed that way. But since I already have the transmission bracket in, I really don't need this anymore. I just need to make sure that it's hanging in the right height location and also left to right, and that's where this comes in. This guy sits against the frame rail, and I have it pushed up just against the edge of that crank hub there. Let me get the light on this. You can see right here, up against the crank hub, up against the frame rail. And on the other side, up against the crank hub, up against the edge of the crank hub and up against the frame rail. So this is an equal distance measuring tool that I use in order to make sure that the engine is exactly centered in the engine bay. And also, of course, as you know, I have that kind of already exemplified here by virtue of the drive shaft pointing straight backward. That's what helps it point straight backward and go where it needs to go. So here we are underneath the car, and you can see that I've actually maintained this factory mounting location on the subframe, so I know exactly where it needs to go. And this is actually going to be a rotating point for the other. You can see the whole rack kind of rotates a little bit as I'm approaching the oil pan, and the lines are the direct interference to the oil pan. That's a problem, but for a powered rack, it's mandatory. We have two options there. The first option is to rebend the lines in a different location, preferably underneath the oil pan. That's an opportunity there. Or you can most people are just going to end up pushing the lines out of the way, which is a possibility. You can do that. So those are two options for getting the rack to fit. Now, having this thing rotate is really advantageous for us because we can figure out very easily how straight the rack is. We know what this location is in space, so we will be able to figure out where this needs to be for everything to be nice and straight and true. So that's good. The subframe is going to end up coming from this location over to this location underneath the oil pan, and kind of like be almost like a skid plate in and of itself, which is, I think, a great idea. We're going to gusset it. We're going to end up adding additional frame members in there to make this subframe really nice and strong. And this is going to be a single shear installation where it's going to be tapped on the top side because we cannot get a nut on there. It's going to be a M14 by 1.5 bolt. It's going to go through this hole. It's going to screw onto there. This is going to be single shear, but this is going to be double shear. It should be more than strong enough for our application. Everything is welded in. You can see that the engine is completely being supported now. There's nothing underneath. You can see here on this side, right there, I've got the passenger side. Again, these are all just tacked in place, but the gusseting is now there, and this is the driver's side, and that is, again, tacked in place, but everything is good and holding in place. I've got my subframe. We're going to work on that now. You can see that we've got an angle here, and I've got an angle here. Yes, I did cut this off, but I'm rewelding it all back together so I've got a plan with this, and it's going to involve taking some square tube and bringing it down, underneath, and then up, and that's going to be one continuous piece, and it's going to be gusseted underneath a little bit, and it's going to make this subframe just about as strong as it was before. So I'm going to start off using cardboard here, and this is kind of what it's going to be like. So this is going to come in there like that. This is a 3-inch piece by 1-inch rectangular bar, and this is going to be coming up like that, and this guy is going to be coming up like that. And it's going to kind of bridge the two pieces together, just like that. And what you see down below here, that's the lowest it's going to be. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit lower than the existing subframe. It's actually going to be used as a skid plate as well, which is going to be nice. But this inside is going to be all filled up with a 1-inch bar. And then down below here, I'm going to gusset as well, and down here. And that'll allow me the clearance. The steering rack can stay in the same exact position. I think this is going to be ready to go. All right, so the passenger side is 55-degree bend, and the driver's side is a 70-degree bend, and I'm going to bend them, and I'm gonna hit those numbers and see how that goes from there. All right, so I skipped ahead a little bit, did some creative fabrication here, and I made a one piece here on this side with the 70-degree bend on the passenger side by the steering rack, and over here I made a notch for the oil plug. And this guy I had to cut off because it's just, I'm gonna have to push it in a little bit more and do a trial and error on that side, but that's okay, because the whole thing's gonna get welded. Let's see how this thing fits. As you can see here, this kind of rotates in and out, which makes it a lot easier for me to get it installed. But if I were to just kind of place it here where it kind of belongs, you can see I've got the oil plug there that's in pretty good shape. This actually is not going to look too bad getting it into place. So I'm gonna tack it in, and I'm gonna start fitting where the steering rack is gonna be, and then getting that other piece that finishes the whole subframe together. All right, now that I got the subframe essentially where I want it, tacked in place, now it's a matter of getting the other part of the power steering rack installed. As you can see, it's rotating about this bolt, which is a factory location, hasn't moved, hasn't changed. So now I need to make sure that the height here, which is maintained, I gotta tighten this up in order to get to it, but this is gonna be pushed up and it's gonna be pushed over here. I'm gonna make sure that this and this are the same as this and that. That way I know that the rack is perfectly straight. All right, so as far as rack height goes, you can see I'm gonna use this as a point of reference here. So I'm gonna take this and put it right underneath the mount, and you can see here that it's sitting, I don't know, 5.5 centimeters. And I'll do the same thing on this side. Maybe a little bit less. So maybe I need to bring this down just a tiny bit and make sure that that rack is a little bit lower there so it's sitting at the exact same height.
To make this mount was actually pretty easy. We just needed to take the passenger side and really tighten it down, take our 2x1 by 0.120 bar and start measuring and cutting and making sure that when we actually install this bolt through this, that it actually is going to be nice and tight and it's going to fit perfectly. So we take the bolt, we install it first into the rack, make sure everything is nice and straight, and then we take and start welding it all up. As you can see, we welded it to our main new subframe, and it worked really, really well for us.
All right, so now we got the subframe done. The steering rack is exactly where we want it without any interferences. We can now have power steering. We're gonna yank this thing out, throw the 8 HP on. We're also gonna see what the subframe looks like after everything is removed, and start laying some really heavy beads and tacks down on that to strengthen it up. So now we got the 8 HP installed. It is noticeably longer by at least 4 or 5 inches, which is okay because I think we might actually be able to leverage my N54 E30 brackets and actually use them and maybe rebend them. So let's try getting this guy in. Let's see how easy it goes in. And then when we take everything out, we'll take a final look at how the subframe looks and then go from there.
The 8 HP 50 is a big transmission, no doubt, but it fit in pretty nicely here, especially after the subframe was modified and updated to fit and accommodate this drivetrain. Repurposing our own brackets from previous projects has actually been quite rewarding here because it actually fit really nicely. The 8 HP is pretty much the same length as the GS6 53BZ for the N54 swap into the E30. So we were able to repurpose a lot of it, which was really nice. The passenger side needed to be modified slightly, but it fits really good in there. These brackets are going to be really nice and strong. This is the same design that we've used for the N54, and it's worked really well. The interferences are actually not bad on this. It's a pretty big transmission, no doubt about it, but it's positioned straight and true. We've got our front half dimension, and everything seems to be working out really nicely. All of the clearances are maintained here. You can see that subframe is tacked in place. We just need to do our fine tuning of that subframe, but I did want to show you what that subframe looks like now. All right, the E30 subframe is just about done. It's been tacked in place. Obviously, we need to fully weld this thing, but it has a really nice U-shape to clear that oil pan of the B48, and that power steering single shear mount on the lower side of the driver's side is nice and stout as well. It's really strong. This is using a 3x1 by 120 thick square tubing. We got a double shear on one side and a single shear on the other, so that steering rack isn't going anywhere. We've also got to box this whole thing in. We've got to continue to gusset things to make it even stronger while everything is already installed. And of course, we have our oil drain plug, which will have a tube installed in place of the notch that's there, you see, and that tube will accommodate a 17mm socket for easy oil pan and oil changes, that type of stuff. So it's coming along. So unfortunately, the outro will be voiceovered as well. Look, we've got our B48 done. We've got our 8HP50Z. We've done our 6-speed manual transmission as well. The 6-speed manual will be the final configuration in this E30. So that is going to be what we're going to be finishing up next year. But we've got our brackets, right? We've got our bracket kits, and we're going to be selling them on our website. So take a look at the link down in the description if you wanted to pre-order one of these for your setup. Thank you guys for watching. Hey, take it easy.